for Syracuse Urban Renewal Agency. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Good morning. Michael Collins, Commissioner of Department of Neighborhood and Business Development.
And Brad O'Connor, Commissioner of Finance.
So for the budget hearing for Syracuse Urban Renewal Agency, together we'll give you the overview of the agency purpose and get into a little bit of the details. And then we've also have Deputy Mayor Owens with us to be able to, between the three of us, we should be able to answer all your questions. So for new counselors, this is SURA is a public benefits corporation, and it exists for the purpose of being able to make sure that the business of renewing their urban centers is able to be conducted. It is Commissioner O'Connor can get into how it is structured. I sit here because it is administered through the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development. Historically, this is a position that many years ago had upwards of 200 positions. We've been working over the years to bring it down to the positions that are appropriate for SURA, for the work of an urban renewal agency. We're currently sitting well below that at 64. But before we get into all the details, you want to cover?
Sure. So, as Commissioner Collins mentioned, this is a public benefit corporation. It operates under a 3-member board of directors, and the members are, in the bylaws, the mayor of the city, the president of the common council, and the commissioner of finance. I act as the treasurer of the organization. So the SURA has a cooperation agreement with the city under which SURA employees provide some form of assistance to the city, operating assistance, administrative, personnel, legal, fiscal services that support the urban renewal projects. So the salaries and benefits of these employees are then billed from SURA to the city on a monthly basis. There are 64 employees of SURA, and those employees aren't all working for the city or supporting the city in all ways. So the employees are actually about 65% of those are working for city departments, largely neighborhood and business development, with some of them providing support services. About 27% of those employees are billed directly to a federal grant. HUD grants are the biggest activity in neighborhood and business development. A lot of them are billed.
Yes. They are all working for the city of Syracuse. They're not all billed and paid for from the city of Syracuse. Some of them are paid for grants.
Yes, but there are also
what percent, sorry, Brad, did you say was through HUD grants?
27%, and that's both HUD grants and ARPA. And 8% of those employees are billed to other agencies. SIDA and SEDCO are supported by SURA employees. So, how this gets to the budget book that you're reviewing, there isn't a SURA budget. SURA isn't a department in the city. Those employees are part of each department's budget, and they come through what we refer to as the 415 line. That's expense account 541500 professional services. So in most departments, you'll see that professional services line. Largely that line is SURA reimbursement. So you won't really see anything in the book that shows you what all of SURA is. It's broken out into each of these individual departments. I guess I'll pause there. I know there's usually a lot of questions on what SURA is and how we use SURA, but wondering what questions you have.
I guess my first one, if I could just hop in, what was the SURA budget last year?
I don't know that Tim, do we put together a total budget on that 415 line for SURA?
I'll just say because it feels like in the past, and we were talking about kind of weaning off of SURA altogether when we first came on council, and that was kind of like an objective or a goal, and it feels like it's expanded a lot.
It
Hasn't?
No, because we started out with a couple hundred people on SURA.
Okay.
And when Pat and I, we can go back, say 10 years, we've asked that they continue to reduce it, and they have reduced it considerably. There were
Okay.
a couple hundred people on SURA.
Yeah,
Yes.
my fault then. I'm
No,
that's
no,
why I'm
you're
trying to
fine.
get some historical context here.
What you will see, and council will notice that we did bump up this year from last year. We had 58 people on the roster last year. We're at 48?
48?
I believe it was, yeah, 58 was the last count that that
I
I'd seen.
think 58 for all of SURA, but maybe many of them were billed to SIDA or SEDCO. I think the total SURA roster was 58 last year.
And we bumped up this year to 64 because we have included new positions, code enforcement, to increase some of our code enforcement, some of the ARPA positions to help support us, to particularly for Mike's department, for the management we need for that, and the gun violence position.
So the 3 million plus it includes the 16 vacancies that you have in this paper.
And I just want to make a statement as far as SURA, because sitting on the SURA board, we've had conversations, and so we're putting SURA back to what it was originally for, and that was urban renewal. So all of these folks on here, they're helping us with different things like blueprint and property and, you know, getting things that's going to stabilize communities so that we can do low-income, affordable housing. So I just want to put that plug in there.
The commissioner and I are also looking at what role SURA can play here for the $11 million of ARPA money that we're looking at. What role can SURA play? We see, we're trying to look at the benefit, possibly SURA.
Yeah.
The commissioner and I are exploring the role that SURA could finally play in some property development possibilities now that we have so much ARPA money as well. We're looking at logistically, is it moving money to a place arbitrarily or putting it in NBD where it would function? But we really see an opportunity finally for SURA to actually have some a role in redevelopment of neighborhoods.
And it's deeper than the ARPA money because SURA actually owns some of the property. So we have some of this property that we can do builds on.
And could strategically acquire some of the property for some of the development
Right.
projects.
So
From
can
now
y'all
on,
explain
quiet.
that a little bit? Like how does SURA own the property and how is it funded? Like how do they buy the property or sell it or whatever? Can you explain that?
My understanding is that it has historically held properties, that it just has been on the books, because when we established the land bank, we transitioned to what you guys do, foreclosing on property and sending it to the land bank. But we see the opportunity for very strategic opportunities where we can, particularly for city foreclosed properties, to be able to amass properties for development, particularly if it's adjacent to a SURA-owned property now.
So is it essentially city-owned property and then they kind of just transfer it over to SURA?
The way that it had been done in the past, there could have been some of that type of action. Since the creation of the land bank, we haven't done it that way. What we found, though, was that as we've been exploring what does healthy redevelopment look like now that we actually have access to funds to do healthy redevelopment through a variety of different sources, that the purpose of SURA originally included property holding and property redevelopment, so we would be able to get back to that where there is complete control rather than having control it out of a third party.
And some of it was grandfathered in. Some of, even before I came on, it was property sitting in SURA.
With no plan, because there just wasn't enough resources. But here we are in this moment in time where we have some resources, that if there are adjacent SURA properties to redevelopment plans, here we have an opportunity to maybe get SURA engaged in that process.
And then the vacant positions that you have on here, do you kind of just hold those open or are you looking to fill those positions, the ones that are vacant?
We're always looking to fill any vacant positions. There's certainly during the early time of the pandemic, one of the things we did was hold open positions to be able to manage cash flow. We're not in that position right now, so we want to make sure that we only want positions to exist that serve a function that benefits the constituents. So if it's on the list, it's specifically for that purpose.
Bless you.
So, Michael, what, I'm sorry, Commissioner, what are, how many of these are civil service positions? Are these civil service positions?
A handful will be civil service. Yeah, the code, well, it's more than a handful, because the code enforcement ones will be civil service. But the grant, for instance, the positions that have to do with managing SIDA, managing SEDCO, for which SIDA and SEDCO put a fair amount of money into it, managing the HUD grants, those are not civil service positions, as is typical across the nation for those types of positions.
To the President's point, I mean, I think it's important, if we are going to go ahead, we have to be as flexible as possible, as nimble as possible. Sometimes that might still service, but that isn't sometimes.
And that's it. And that was exactly why I was getting up to the mic. Sometimes, you know, particularly as Director Dishaw came on board, he really wanted to focus on hiring individuals who were familiar with the various communities that the code enforcement officers work in. They may not test the top 3 in the civil service exam. While they're still obligated to passing that test when it comes up again, at least it gets them in the door. Helps them understand the process for code enforcement and prep for the test. So far, we've been successful in getting them ready. We maybe have lost maybe 1 or 2 people but we make sure they understand that when that test comes back up, you're going to have to qualify and qualify for that test and take that test. But it is an opportunity for us to be flexible, as you said, is getting people in the door.
So if I can ask a question, the 65% you said that are paid for by the city, 27% are paid by HUD and ARPA, and then 8% SIDE and SEDCO. That 65%, is that from the AIM money, or how does that get funded?
Yeah, so it's part of each of the department's budget, so we don't identify revenues that we allocate to each department. We kind of pool the revenues and pool the expenses and make sure we can pay for everything, so we don't tie the revenues directly to any expenses in the general fund.
Okay, thanks.
I just have a detailed question. There's a line on here under CPC, untitled, move the money from codes. Do you know what that one is?
Yeah, so this is, you know, something that we're halfway up the stream on or down the stream on. The codes, illegal set out and board up charges that historically have been billed through neighborhood and business development. We are trying to bring all of the city's billing into City Payment Center and have one centralized place to do that. Just last week, we worked with neighborhood and business development to identify those tasks and start to move them into City Hall.
Any other questions?
Just conclude with saying, the purpose of SURA and those 200 people that used to be on the list, there were, who knows, reasons why people were put on in SURA. What we in this administration have done, worked very hard to do, is to make sure that the individuals under that line in that program are meeting the needs or positioned in there aligned with the mission of SURA, which has to do with redevelopment, neighborhood revitalization. There are still some outlying positions. Some of them are retirees that came back. Others are situations like Brad just talked about, so little anomalies.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, we'll close the hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Did you
Councilor.
tell WNCY that we're closed?
You're better at that than me.